Hi guys, how are you guys doing? I just want to, I have a couple words for you guys, but I'm going to just talk about this one really quick. It's not really a word, but more just advice based on like what I've been through, my experience. And I did talk to someone about this yesterday as well, and I feel like there's others that need to hear this, but embrace your separation period. Embrace the isolation period that God is going to put you in. Remember that right before God leads you to your purpose, or right before you start walking in purpose, you'll notice that a lot of things that are not for you, a lot of things that don't serve your highest good, a lot of things that are not a part of God's plans, they'll start falling apart. People will stop dropping like flies around you. Like, you'll literally start receiving betrayal from all around. Betrayal from family, betrayal from friends, betrayal from work. And it may even be situations where, like, even your environment, you may notice that you're forced to leave a specific environment. And sometimes because you're too comfortable, God may make it to where something actually happens to where you're forced to move out. And it may not even be under your terms, like you wanting to leave or you choosing to move. It may be as simple as there's a leak in your apartment, or something has to be fixed and it's not being fixed and you can't stay there. Maybe it's because of mold, right? Or maybe you got evicted, or it may be, maybe you do have the funds to move and you're supposed to move. You get what I'm saying? But oftentimes when God puts us in a period of separation, aka isolation, things tend to fall apart. Things tend to fall apart, and it's really a part of the plan. But in our eyes, from seeing it from a human's perspective, we may be like, oh my gosh, everything is going wrong. Not realizing that anything that goes wrong in our life is still according to God's plan. Even when our enemies attack us, that's still according to God's plan, right? Because God knows everything before it happens. God knows the plots and schemes of the enemies. And even when things are not done because of the enemy, and things are just falling apart and it feels like it's falling apart, it's actually a part of God's plan for our lives, right? So embrace the changes. Embrace the changes. Embrace being alone for a season. It may be 2 seasons. It may be 3 seasons. You have to remember that a lot of people that went into the wilderness, they were alone. Jesus fasted for 40 days, 40 nights, and he was tempted by the devil, but he was alone until until the angel came or the devil came. He was alone. There is nobody else in the physical around him. You get what I'm saying? When Elijah had to run away, he was alone. You see what I'm saying? Oh, speaking of that, God, thank you for reminding me. He reminded me of something, but I can't really say what it is yet. But the point of me saying this is embrace the isolation, embrace the separation period, because let me tell you something. That's when you're going to learn the most about yourself. That's when you're going to discover a lot of things about yourself that you never knew existed. That's when you're going to rediscover things that you thought that you forgot or you didn't know how to do anymore. Or you may have even, your personality, you may have dimmed your light for a long time and you may not have found out who you are. You may have revolved your whole life around making other people happy and doing what other people want. Especially if you're dealing with a narcissist, you may have revolved your whole life around doing that, being a people pleaser, to the point where you never really once were able to please yourself and to know exactly who you are, what you want, what you need out of this life, out of your purpose, out of your relationship with God, right? When you build your relationship with God and you get stronger with God, you start to learn more about who you are as a person, your character, your traits, your gifts, your hidden talents, everything, because God starts to open doors. And it's kind of like when he opens doors, it's kind of like God is literally showing, it's like a mirror being shined on you, and you're able to really take a good look at yourself, not just in the physical, but you get to take a good look at yourself in the spiritual. You see what I mean? And that's when you actually start to love yourself more. On top of that, the isolation and separation period is a way for you to even advance in your gifts. See, when you're around too much people, when you're around your friends or family or anyone, even at work or whatever, even if you're not a person that goes out, but you have like a 1 or 2 friend that would come over, a 1 or 2 friend that you would go out with, etc., that's still too much distraction. That's still too much noise. You get what I'm saying? When you're discovering your gifts or rediscovering yourself and you're finding out hidden things about yourself that you didn't know, right? You have to analyze what types of gifts you have, why you have them. You start to, and then that's when the training actually starts. The training of being able to distinguish the Lord's voice compared to monitoring spirits' voices, being able to distinguish, between dreams, being able to interpret dreams properly, being able to use your gift of discernment to really feel, and really just analyzing everything. Because why? You are discovering, you're self-discovering, but not only that, you're discovering your spiritual side too. You're discovering yourself in the spirit as well, right? So isolation and separation period is meant for that. That's why everyone goes through a wilderness period, because the wilderness period is a very important part of our training, because that's when we're mainly focused on what God needs us to do. And in that wilderness period, you'll notice that God will literally have you working hard on your purpose, or hard towards something that is leading to your purpose. So then when it's time for you to come out of hiding, out of your wilderness season, you have fruits, the fruits of your labor, the fruits that you have gathered while you were in your isolation and separation period. You see what I'm saying? So you come out a whole new person. You come out of your isolation and separation period renewed. It feels as if you have a new heart, a new mind. It feels like everything about you has been restored, renewed, because when you go into that period and you are getting closer with God, He is renewing everything. You'll notice that because you know more about yourself, more about your personality, more about your gifts. When you start coming out of your isolation period and start interacting again with people, you will notice that your personality is more lively. You'll notice that you're not going through as much anxiety anymore. You're not afraid to interact with people. You're basically unapologetically being you. Unapologetically being you, and you're standing in your truth, because you now know who you are. So there's no room for insecurity, there's no room for lack of confidence, because you now know who you are, right? So I say this to say that if you are going through a period of the wilderness season, or a period of the isolation, and you may be like, you know what, God, I don't like being alone, I don't like being by myself, this is taking too long, it's such a embrace it. Because when you start that career, right, you need to be headstrong emotionally, mentally, spiritually in that career. And it's very important for you to know who you are as a person. Therefore, you're not being taken advantage of. You're not being used. You get what I'm saying? When you are operating in that career, through that career, when you are working in that career, in that field, or whatever. If you are supposed to be in ministry and you're supposed to be leading, God is going to want you to lead even when you bleed. And what does that mean? It means that when you're going to have moments where you're leading people, even when you are still going through a broken period, because God is encouraging you and others at the exact same time. But because many people are not strong enough to do this, they don't walk in their full purpose of ministry, because they don't know how to lead even while they're bleeding, right? So to bleed while you're bleeding, it requires a lot of strength. It does require a lot of strength. It's similar to like me giving you guys your messages and your videos. Yeah, I go through my stuff on a daily basis as well, but I still show up and show out for God. You get what I'm saying? It's the same concept, right? So in order for you to be confident in that, you got to go through that separation and isolation period, so you can know who you are as a person. You can know who you are in God's kingdom, what your assignment is, and you can be very, very detailed on, you'll know the details on specific things, to where you could actually walk with your head up and be confident, because you've received all that you had to receive from God, knowledge wise, wisdom wise, about who you are, so you can operate confidently, right? So it's the same concept. It's like even when you get into a marriage, you have to know who you are as a wife or as a husband before you are able to say, God, I'm willing to be responsible for the heart, for the spirit of someone else. You get what I'm saying? Because when you are in a marriage, you're not just responsible for yourself anymore. You're responsible for your children, or you're responsible for your husband and your wife, and which means that you have to be that prayer warrior. You have to be confident. You have to be that Proverbs 31 wife, or you have to be that leading husband. And in order for that to take place, you have to know yourself. Hence why many people don't know themselves. They go into relationships because of their fleshly desires and their own decisions. And then basically what ends up happening is they're not leading the right way as a husband or a wife. Why? Because they don't even know themselves. So they go into these relationships with a lot of unhealed scars, a lot of unhealed issues, and then there's a lot of problems, right? And there's a lot of projection that ends up taking place in the marriages or relationships because a person has not figured out who they are as a person. A person has not figured out who they are in God's kingdom and what purpose God has for them. A person has not figured out, the relationship with God and how to strengthen their relationship with God. Therefore, they're clueless on how to be a good husband or a good wife, or clueless how to love their wife like Christ loves the church, because they don't understand that concept on a spiritual level, because they don't have that relationship with God to understand that concept to its full extent, right? So same concept with the wives. It's kind of like, how could you be a Proverbs 31 wives if you can't even, you don't even know who you are as a person, or you don't even know who you are with your relationship with Christ? How could you operate through the Proverbs 30 wives position? You don't even know yourself. So I say this to say that when you guys go through your isolation or separation period, and it looks like God is removing everyone from around you, use that period wisely. Do not be upset about that period. Use that period wisely. Okay, that period is meant to mold you into who God needs you to be. So when you come out of that period, you are stronger, you are more confident. When I went through my separation and isolation period, I needed it. Because before that, I was insecure. Before that, I had panic attacks. Before that, I had PTSD. Before that, listen, everything I'm doing right now, I would have never thought I'd be doing it. You couldn't even get me to leave the house to buy groceries. I would prefer to order food because of how many spirits I was battling. You get what I'm saying? But once I went through my isolation period, separation period, and I was able to focus more on God, I was able to receive the deliverance that was needed. Not just physical deliverance, but the deliverance that was needed for my mental and for my spiritual. For me to find out who I truly am as a person, right? And what my calling and my purpose is in my life, right? So the isolation and the separation is crucial, but it's needed. It's definitely needed. Once I came out of my isolation and separation period, that's when I came out of hiding. That's when I revealed who I am. That's when I showed my face. That's when I showed, okay, this is the person operating behind these gifts. Do you get what I'm saying? That's when I decided to start wholeheartedly walking with Christ, is when I finally knew who I am in Christ, who I am through Christ. It was hard for me to start fully walking with Christ because I didn't even know who I fully was through Christ. It's when I pulled away and spent time with God, I was able to figure out who I truly am through Christ, and I was confident enough to operate through that. You see what I'm saying? And that's what I'm trying to tell y'all. Embrace the isolation and the separation period, okay? I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Sorry if the camera was shaky, but I love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.